Good afternoon for you too. We are being recorded. So it is on the hour, 11 a.m. in eastern United States and Canada and various other times around the country and world. And I'm always excited about how these Zoom sessions have gotten me to get a better feel for the world in different time zones coming together all at once. Um, Happy Saturday morning, afternoon, and in Australia, probably early morning. Um, we are back on track and about to do another, what do we call these things? I don't know, caller training on Zoom or something like that. Um, this morning's speaker needs no introduction. I don't plan to introduce him. Anyway, you got me talking again. When I call people and ask them if they're interested in giving a talk, I usually ask them, what are you really passionate about? Tell me something that you really enjoy, or something that you really feel you can share something. And then I thought, well, I got this thing I can share. I've shared it with other groups, and it seems to have been well received. By the way, I've got three, four, five people saying, yeah, I'll think about it. But I couldn't get anybody to commit for this week. So you guys are, what's the right wording? Stuck with me? Blessed with me? um, anyway, I see some.
There's a method to their madness.
They just are dying to hear from me. And I
Mhm.
know. I was going to say I see some new faces, but they're not new to me. They're familiar faces, and that's cool. Um, but they're people that we don't see here very often, and it's nice to see some of you guys and gals. Um, where are we? We're at 16. So the topic I was going to play with here today, or share with some things about, is the plus called Dixie Grand. Um, we all know what it is. I'll repeat the most of the definition in a minute. It's something that some callers use a little bit, some use a little bit more. Um, but if you do use it, it's something that you can add just a twist of a slightly different way to get to an. And there are lots of strange things and wonderful things you can do with it. But I'm going to be talking mostly about very easy things to throw into your repertoire to just give a slightly different Alaman left. I think I've got one that goes to a right and left grand, and some that are singing call things. But mostly it's just for those people that don't use it because they have a little trouble setting it up. I'm going to show ways from a setup, which is what I like to call a phaser thing, that you all know and probably get into frequently just before an Alaman left, and will let you go to a Dixie Grand, just throw in an extra call or two to give you that. And let's see. I was looking at the. I rarely look at color lab definitions, I've got to admit, because you grow up with them and you have a feel for the gestalt of what they're supposed to be, and then they get written to cover all sorts of things you hadn't thought about, and you miss out. But I decided I better look at the real thing. But basically, the color lab, and I'm not reading, I'm paraphrasing really loosely, is from any position that you can, basically with at least two dancers or four dancers because of symmetry facing each other. Um, Everybody, those who can, give a right pull by. Then it deteriorates into a circle. Everybody gives a left pull by, and everybody gives a right pull by. Um, Thank you for confirming, Clark. uh, and generally, it ends in an Alaman left. There are other things you can do. Somebody suggested we could go into left-handed waves and other things. Yeah, but I don't want to get into the wild stuff. I want to get into helping you figure out ways to easily to easily integrate it into your current programs. And with that, I want to switch over to my friend Taminations, our friend Taminations. Thank you again, Brad. I'm assuming, oh, let's see, and I want to pull that down so I still see that screen, and I want to put you guys where I can see more of your faces. Good. Or more of your names, if that's the case. So I've chosen to have unique colors for two adjacent couples, and thinking of these two as corner people. I've got to memorize that. And I don't particularly care. Let me just do a shortcut. Oops.
Can you highlight the number 2 guy, please? Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to make people go away here. What color do you want her? Him. Is that good enough for you? Yolanda,
Yes,
is that okay?
yes, yes, thank you.
Okay. So the place that I think most callers do it from is from a double pass through. Let's see, let's do a head star through and zoom.
Yep.
So you've got one paired couple and one unpaired couple. The corner pairs are there together, these two, and the paired couple is in the front. This is where I think most callers use it from. Dixie Grand. Alaman left. And Promenade. And hopefully everybody's got partners and in sequence and all that other stuff. So how can you set that up? Yeah, let's leave the numbers there. It saves some time. So if I use my usual, I'm in a corner box. Typically what? Swing through, boys run. Ferris wheel, centers pass through. What could I do? I could do a pat, instead of calling my Allen man left here or center square through 3, I could call pass to the center. Now I've got my two couples that I was watching, one paired, one not. The paired one in the middle, Dixie Grand. Oh, let's get them back home. Alaman left and Promenade. If I were really aiming at that, there's another way I can do that. Let's square them up. We could do a 4 ladies chain. 4 ladies chain. I'm trouble reading my notes while I'm doing this. And then the heads right and left through, and heads star through. 4 ladies chain to get this makes me think of Lorenz's talk last week. But anyway, I've still got a corner pair over here. The paired couple in the front happens to be the other one, and I can still do a Dixie Grand from here. Dixie Grand, Alaman left.
I don't think so.
And Promenade home. Right, left, right.
Oh,
And there's the corner, Alaman left, and Promenade home.
nope.
And in those cases, both the those who can was just some dancers, not everybody. Another classic way that lots of dancers have used for years, and I won't demonstrate it because Taminations won't do it, but it's in the handout that Dan will be making available. You can take notes if you want to look at this thing later, but it's from a single file promenade. You do heads pass through, one way to get there, heads pass through, separate around one to a line. So you got a boy, boy, girl, girl line, forward and back to make them happy. Circle left, 2 guys, 2 gals. Reverse, go single file. Just the men do a U-turn back and Dixie Grand. And that means some people are facing, some aren't on the right, everybody with the left. Deteriorating to a circle is pretty easy from there because there you are. Classic way of doing it. It's something that is not easy for me to put in my repertoire, so I have to write it down if I'm going to use it. Another place that's easy to put in, let's see, score your set. From partner lines, make a line. I happen to have Taminations do a line this way because I like looking at them facing north-south. But we have partner lines here. Actually, let me make my cursor slightly bigger. I forgot to do that. I should have done that before. There we go. So couples 1, 2, 3, and 4. From partner lines, an easy, if you're there and about to use a different partner line get out that you have, if you do square through 4 trade by. Two easy calls to remember, and then you can do your Dixie Grand. By the way, snapshot stuff, just looking at the dancers, I can't see, I guess people are all unrelated there, so I can't see the Dixie Grand coming, but I know that I can get there pretty simply. So if I do a Dixie Grand here, everybody should be facing their corner afterwards. And I can do an Allemande left and promenade. Excuse me, this is terrible. So again, that's a simple way to put in your normal thing. If you happen to be in a partner line, and instead of going to the whatever get out you normally do from there, just do a square through 4 trade by, and then you can do a Dixie Grand. Here's even an easier one. Square your set. An easier one for you to add to your repertoire. I'm going to go to a corner box. Who's ever been in a corner box before? Geez. From here, instead of calling Allemande left, all I got to do is a pass through to a Dixie Grand. I can do a Dixie Grand here. Now, when I say those who can, we're assuming these guys can do a right pull by also, and they will if you call it. And sure enough, with partners, back to back with partners facing corners, so Allemande left and promenade home. So again, corner box, pass through, Dixie Grand. Easy way to set it up. Same setup, but slightly smoother. Heads, pair off. If we do a slide through from here, so we have a corner line, get me to the same place, but do a square through 4. And that gives the right hand right out there for everybody to do their Dixie Grand with. Same as if they'd done a pass through, Dixie Grand. So, point made so far, corner box, but staying with that group, get yourself into a double pass through with a paired couple in the center. That's your standard way. corner box just pass through to a Dixie Grand or get to that position somehow. Partner line, another place we get to frequently. We do, I can't remember the module again. We do a square through 4 and trade by. Excuse my nose, it is running and I have to keep trying to catch it. Let's look at starting from a completed double pass through setup. Let's square them up. Heads right and left through. Star through. Heads star through. Come on, Taminations. The dancers would have known. So another place you frequently get to, I can do a pass through to the corner here. But instead I'm going to do a double pass through to a Dixie Grand. Which gets the guy and his current partner to the same place you would have been for a corner box pass through, but has these others not facing. Let's do a Dixie Grand from there. Allemande left and promenade home. Let's square our sets here. So let's get to that a different way. Heads past the ocean. Center girls trade. Centers recycle. Centers recycle. How'd I get that? Oh, I had the center girls run instead of trade. Let's start over again. Heads past the ocean. Center girls trade. Centers recycle. Same as the right and left through, star through. So I can do a double pass through. Again, instead of, and I imagine, let's centers right and left through. I imagine if I were in this place where I could normally do a center square through 3, I could call square through 3, but on the third hand, everybody double pass through. But I'm not going to do that. We're back to this place here. So double pass through, Dixie Grand, Allemande left and promenade home. So now we've done it from a completed double pass-through formation. Just a little bit more variety to throw it into your usual thing. I'm going to play with a little, somebody was suggesting in the announcements, what about a left Dixie Grand to a right and left Grand? Here's a setup to do that. Taminations won't do a left Dixie Grand, but we'll fake it somehow. So if I do a head star through, heads box the gnat, so they're half sashayed. I'm going to half sashay the outsides too, but I'm going to do so I'm going to do a head square through 3 while the sides half sashay. Heads square through 3 while sides half sashay. And I just learned this in Mel's group last week when Brad was talking, that you can use while and have one group doing one thing while the others are doing another. I thought that was pretty cool. And from here, I'd like to do a left Dixie Grand to a right and left Grand. Taminations won't let me do a left Dixie Grand, but if I do a Dixie Grand and it'll get them to the same place just using the wrong hands. They should end up, by doing it a left, then they have their right hands free for their partners, and everybody's facing partner in sequence. And watch this. When I tell them to promenade home, they're home already, but These guys know that it's less than a quarter, so they're going to go all the way. Oh, that the dancers. It was some session recently we were talking about whether dancers do that or not. I mentioned that I tend to get sarcastic on occasion, and I tell the dancers, you know, it's okay to promenade when I call it, but generally because they're not going to. If I notice they're at home, I'll let them stay there. There's this thing called, let's see, magic column circulate in C1. You don't have to know what it is, but I'll set one up anyway. Because it's cool that you can do it. You can get there with mainstream calls, and you can call a Dixie Grand from there, and it feels different to the dancers. And I got lots of ways to set it up. Which one did I want to do? Side ladies chain. Heads past the ocean. Extend. Swing throw. Boys run. Again, this isn't something that is just easy to fit into your repertoire. You got to be working on setting it up, but it does give them a little bit difference if you're playing with a thing. So we're going to do a tag the line face in. This gives us some couples normal, some half sashayed. Everybody facing same sex. So I'm going to call slide through. I'm going to try and call slide through. And some dancers will be able to do it, and some will struggle because they'll. But anyway, if you got dancers that can do it or can talk them through, this is what's called a magic column. Some have right hands joined, some have left hands joined, and we won't talk about the magic column path. But anyway, we can call Dixie Grand from here because we have some facing, and everybody will be available with a left hand. So I'm going to do a Dixie Grand, right pull by, everybody left, everybody right, facing corners. Element left promenade. Just for laughs, I'm going to set that same thing up in a slightly different way. Four ladies chain. And from here, nice dancing. I can't seem to get Taminations to do it, but his heads promenade half and lead to the right. Instead, I'm just going to get there with a lead to the left, and it's, whoops, heads lead left. And for calling, heads promenade half, lead right, veer left. If you call just heads lead left and veer left, it's going to be horrible dancing, but it gets them where I want. But this is another way to just set up the tag the line, face in, slide through Dixie Grand. Tag the line, face in. Facing same sex, slide through. Different people in different places, but still thing, Dixie Grand. Oh, and element and left and promenade home. So as you can see there, oh, here's another one. Actually uses a plus call. Again, to set up the same thing, just for variety. Let's square them up. Heads past the ocean. Ping pong circulate. Hey, we use another plus call. Extend. So what are we going to do here? Oh, recycle. And veer to the left. Recycle, ear left. And to make sure it works right, I couldn't figure out, I figured out other ways, but I'm just going to do a boys circulate. So everybody works out right. And then go back to that same get out, tag the line face in, slide through Dixie Grand. Allman left and promenade home. One that I use a lot because I can remember it, but where you're in a, and I can't get combinations to do it. Let's see. Yeah, let me stop sharing because these last two I can't get combinations to do for me. But one I use a lot is when I'm in an Alamandar, the typical Alaman left for an Alamandar, forward 2, make a star. Shoot the star for a brand new dar. At that point, you can shoot the star to a right and left grand, but if you just say shoot the star, but go full around to the corner, and dancers will do that without a problem. You can do a Dixie Grand from there. So the typical warrior in dar and can shoot the star to a right and left grand. Do a shoot the star, but go full around to the corner. Dixie Grand, right, left, right. And then there's your corner. And that's an easy one to add to your repertoire. Somebody sent me this one. And again, I can't quite get terminations to do it. There may be a way, but from basically a T-bone setup, if you have the heads half square through, right and left through, if you do from here, square through 4, but the sides only go 3, all 8 circulate, and it's going to be a T-bone situation, Dixie Grand. I think that one's on the handout. If you're interested in pushing your checkers through it, they'll do it. But that, again, the main thing I was trying to show here is some very basic ways that you can put it into your normal repertoire from a corner box pass to the center, from a corner box pass through, from a corner box centers unpass through, everybody double pass through, and from partner lines square through 4 trade by, and you can do it from there. And in some of those places, that one in particular, you could do an 8 chain 3 instead if you were not doing plus. And the last one that's easy for me to remember is when you're in a dar, and instead of shoot the star to your partner for right and left grand, you do a shoot the star, but go full around, do a Dixie Grand. That's all I got to say. I'm hoping some of you guys might have some additional things, some additional thoughts, some additional, I see 2 hands already, which is cool, or some questioning some of the stuff I've done. Clark first, Mike second.
If you'll humor me, I wrote down a bunch of comments. The first thing is kind of the unstated thing is, why is it good to use Dixie Grand? And the answer is, you can go to mainstream or plus dances, and especially if the guy's a sight caller, never hear a single Dixie Grand used all evening. So I think it's an underutilized call, and it has a pretty good dance feel. So it's a way to add variety. And even if you don't normally have modules or memorize things to use it, all of what Don suggested gives you simple ways, no matter what your resolution method is, to add Dixie Grands in. So that's why I think Dixie Grand's good. I'm not a big fan of left Dixie Grand to a right and left grand, because it's just way too much in the same direction. Whereas Dixie Grand to an Alaman left breaks that up and then it's either followed with a right and left grand or a promenade. I'm a pretty horrible sight caller, and yet sight calling is my main method of resolution if I haven't used written material. And from a sight calling perspective, can you put up terminations again, Don?
Sure.
With the dancers colored the way you did again, because that was useful.
I have not changed them. Okay.
So when I memorize people for sight calling, I memorize two couples. In this case, our red and green couples, and I know that man one's corner is the green lady. So do a head star through and zoom.
I just want to point out for those that have troubles remembering, man one, you don't have to remember who his corner is. You just have to remember that it's not his partner.
Because I know the two. I know the two couples I memorized. There you go. That's a good point.
Okay.
And I probably don't think of it that way. That might be useful.
What did you ask me to call?
I just want to set up a Dixie Grand. So head star through and zoom was the first way you did it.
I'm going to do it differently to get to the same place. Heads pass.
Fine by me.
Heads pass through, and the heads cloverleaf.
Right. So as I'm sight calling, I can get to this position and notice that, as you said earlier, the couple in the middle is
Paired.
they have their partners, and the couple behind them, they don't have their partners. And then the one check I need to make is when I look at that group of four, the group of four on the left, where because I'm looking at the group of four that has the paired couple in the middle and the people behind them. The only question I need to ask myself is, as a sight caller, is my corner pairing in this group? And here the answer is yes. So that's where I know I can call Dixie Grand. But the important thing is I didn't care when I asked myself that question, is the couple in the middle my primary couple? I'm doing this without thinking about primary and secondary couple. I'm only asking, is the couple in the middle pair, is the couple in the middle have their partner? And is the one on the outside not have the partner? And is the corner in that group of four, the corner pairing? And you're about to put them in a different situation. You're going to do a zoom there, I bet, right?
I'm going to try.
Okay. And here we now have not the green couple in the middle, but we have the red couple in the middle. And let's ask our question, is the corner pairing in there? And sure enough, it's the red lady in the middle with the green lady on the outside. You're pointing in a funny place, Don. You're pointing that my corner pairing isn't there. And if it isn't there, then the trick, so you could either have the centers do a right and left through, or you could do the square through, but on the third hand Dixie Grand, which is what I call. So I can evaluate that situation quick enough that the dancers don't stop and go. And I can either call Dixie Grand or square through on the third hand Dixie Grand, because this is something as a sight caller I can see in real time. And that's why this is the only place I use Dixie Grand from, but it is in my toolbox as a sight caller because it has I don't need the primary, secondary couple stuff, and you end up in this thing pretty often. So that was a second point I wanted to make.
So Clark,
let me pause and you say.
If that's the only one in your toolbox, now you should easily add from a corner box pass through.
Yes. Yeah. Now, a third thing I wanted to say is Dixie Grand, to me, the base call is from that single file circle plus you called it as boys, you turn back. So if we have a circle of 8 dancers, boy, boy, girl, girl, and then there's single file promenading and the boys turn back, let's think of that as the official or the canonical best starting place for Dixie Grand. Don showed us 3 other places, and I want to show you, at least in your mind, because we can't have Taminations do it, how to get that circle into the 3 other places that Don calls Dixie Grand. So let's have that Dixie Grand circle with the genders and the identity set up so that we know Dixie Grand Alaman left works. If you take that circle and squish it into a 2x4, there's 3 places you can squish it. You can squish it once in one way, so it ends in a beginning double pass through. And that's our beginning double pass through Dixie Grand. So if that makes sense, nod or something. Good. And then if we pick a slightly different place to, well, if we take it, squish it 90 degrees off of that, we'll end up in a completed double pass through. And that'll be those completed double pass through Dixie Grand that Don was doing. And then the third place to squish it is 45 degrees off from what we've done. And that will squish it into one of the 2 Dixie Grand circles, Dixie Grands that work from magic columns. And if you found the other place and squished it, you'll be in the other magic column Dixie Grand starting place. So that's how there's 5 places to do Dixie Grand from, and how they all relate to each other. They all go back to the original Dixie Grand circle, plus the different ways to squish it into the 2x4 rectangle that Dixie Grand as a call blends it out into the circle.
By the way,
go.
before you get to it, relative to that, I hadn't worked it out, but I'm pretty sure you can get the circle set up so that instead of boys turn back, you can do girls turn back to a Dixie Grand. I'm sure there's a way to set that up also. And, you know, if you really wanted to theme Dixie Grand, you could probably work that out beforehand and use boys turn back once and then surprise them with the girls but turn back the other time. But I didn't work that one through. Go ahead, Clark.
And I look at my list and I think I've made all the points I want to make. So thank you.
Mike, you had your hand up. Let's hear from Arizona.
I use Dixie Grand a couple different ways. One of the things that you don't want to do is overuse it when you're calling a plus dance. Maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a night is plenty. Because as Clark said, you know, sometimes you right, left, right, and people kind of get tired of that. When you first started, the first thing you did, you had the centers square through, or the center zoom, and then do a Dixie Grand. So when you have any double pass through position you have while you're calling along, if you can recognize that the centers can square through 3, just say zoom Dixie Grand. Now the same thing when you're calling along and you recognize you're in a double pass through position, and if you can have the centers pass through, you can say zoom right and left through Dixie Grand, or right and left through zoom Dixie Grand to an Alaman left. So, you know, you can be calling along, getting that double pass through position and say, oh, I can have the centers pass through. So why don't I just call a zoom Dixie Grand? If you know what I mean.
Mike, were you referring to when one couple is paired and the other isn't?
Right.
Any couple paired and the other one isn't. Yeah.
Right. Now you can have
it just struck me when you said any double pass through formation. I'll bet you could call a Dixie Grand from any place, and on the, you know, instead of Alaman lefting or Alaman left and promenade, keep going, don't slow down, head man and the gal you got wheel around and just sight from there and
right.
surprise them by not doing an Alaman left after it, not worrying about it at all.
Now here's a pretty basic one.
Go ahead.
Promenade your corner, put her in the lead single file, men turn around, start a Dixie Grand.
Ooh, I like that. Let me.
And that's a pretty basic one.
Yeah, but so I'm just writing it in my notes. Men.
You promenade your corner.
With corner.
Put her in the lead single file.
Gesundheit.
Sorry, not muted.
Whoops. I can't spell. I'm going to send my notes that I'm working with here to Dan to upload also when I'm done with them. So put ladies in the lead. Go single file. And what did you do after?
Men turned back, started Dixie Grand.
Great. Okay.
Another one, if you have a zero box wave, have the ends circulate, start a Dixie Grand.
Zero box waves and circulate.
The men circulate and everybody start a Dixie Grand.
Let's take a look at that one in Terminations.
Okay.
And here we are back with our dancers. Let's see. Let's get them to go home. So heads square through 4. Would you say step to a wave?
Right.
So from here, men circulate
Yeah.
to a Dixie
go ahead.
Grand. Nice. That's yeah. I mean, that's almost the same as pass through, but it's a totally different feel
Right.
anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I like that too. Good.
So, you know, if you're calling a plus dance and you're throwing you have your zero box wave and you throw in a relay the deucey, which is actually a zero movement, and then say men circulate, start a Dixie Grand, you know, that's a good get out.
That brings to mind, let me just play around with this for a second. Whoops. What are we trying to do here? Go home.
Don, can you do me a favor? Can you
can.
make the number 2 lady yellow as well? Because then I can see where they're paired up.
Sure.
Thank you. So I can practice partner boxes.
Okay. So, step to a wave, and how am I trying to do this? I'm trying to get to the position of girls trade, but I don't want to call girls trade before. But if we have that wave there, Mike, the same step to a wave but ladies trade, then I can call AC Deucey. To a Dixie Grand.
That's nice.
Except I didn't spell Dixie Grand right.
There you go.
Paths. No, let's get rid of all of them. There's still somebody's got a path going. Oh, there we go. So let's see if we can find a good creative way to do that. Go home. Heads square through 4. Slide through. Reverse flutter. No, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do a flutter wheel. You have to work it up so the flow is okay. And pass the ocean. Now I should be able to do my AC Deucey to a Dixie Grand. I like that, Mike. Thank you.
I got a couple other ways to set up a Dixie Grand circle.
Let me.
Just saying, slide through and flutter wheel doesn't flow too good for the ladies.
I know. I said
Yeah.
You've got to set it up a better way. But
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
But Don, if you can go, because we're talking plus anyway. Yeah, let's. If you don't mind, we can try head square through 4.
Let's see if I can. There we go. Head square through 4. We can do that.
Right and left through via left. ladies trade. And Ferris wheel. Because one of my modules to chair is a double pass through track 2 is a center's pass through step to a wave, right? But with 180 degrees. So if we had this X, this talking mental image again, we had that X on the left-hand side, and we need to set up this wave, right? So center, we could say center's pass to make a wave, AC, Doocy, Dixie Grand. But
nice.
so we do double pass through. So we had an X on the left, and we call Ferris wheel, and then we call double pass through track 2. Maybe the boys circulating too much. I see that now. AC Doocy. It's maybe too much travel for the boys, but just for the thought process.
There we go. Nice. Again, just slight tweaks on what we already know, but adding it in. And as Mike said, you don't want to add it in too often, but it does break up the center square through 3 to the corner by doing it once in a while. And if you want to workshop it from all these different formations, that's yet another way to get into it. I like that double pass through to the AC Doocy. And I haven't written this down yet. So it was a 0 box wave.
Boys circulate.
And I did that one already. Okay.
And girls trade AC Doocy.
So girls.
And actually, you can say girls trade twice, boys circulate, Dixie Grand. Why not?
We'll have to work some of those out a little more smoothly and better words there. So when I send this list to people, we'll get it able to get it. I mean, Mike, did we interrupt, or you said you had some more of the circle things set up? I imagine there are a lot of those. I had a bunch too, but I figured just showing the basic one was good, unless you've got.
Okay. Heads right and left through.
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to square our sets. Okay, heads right and left through.
Pass through. Around 1 to a line of 4.
Whoops.
Boy, girl, set up again.
Pass through. Now, I don't know if Tam Nations will do this or not, but everybody turn right single file.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Ladies turn around, or you turn back or whatever, and start your Dixie Grand.
Okay. Again, this is a paired couple, an unpaired couple, and a corner pair in that same group of 4. And it's just a cool way of getting there.
Yeah. And if you do the whole thing all over again, and you pass through and everybody turn left single file, and the men turn around and start a Dixie Grand.
And this is.
Let me make a point before you lose this.
I was going to say,
said,
Clark, that this relates to what you were doing, of that all the single file promenades squished into different ways, and he's unsquishing it. But go ahead. I didn't mean to jump on you.
Only that when in the sequence we have written, it's pass through face right. Then what the caller would say, because Tam Nations can't do it, but single file promenade.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. If you're doing a single file circulate and want it to break into a single file promenade, just call it and it happens. Interesting question. Any other, stop sharing. Any other people want to contribute some thoughts, additions, or questions that we haven't heard from?
You have 3 hands up. You should pick them in the order.
I only saw Lorenz's because I only have so many eyes. But who are the others? Because we've heard from Lorenz.
Mel and Chris. Let's go first. Let's go Mel. Go or Chris.
Chris had his hand up first.
Okay, then go Chris, then Mel.
Oh, that's
then
right.
myself.
I keep looking for real hands instead of the little ones. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just, I know we have at least a couple of new people here, and I just wanted to restate the thing that that Clark said back when, and we've alluded to it a few times, but it's that sort of thing I know can go by quickly when you're new. So the main trick that Clark showed and that we've talked about is when you're if you're sight calling, or even if you're writing it and you happen to look down there, because writing and sight calling are pretty much the same thing, right? So you look to see if all the people get a double pass-through set up and look to see if all the people that you know are on the same side, and then it's just a matter of is the couple, whoever you're looking at in the middle there, are they paired up or not with their partner? If they are, then just zoom them, so because that's not the ones you want in there, and then you're good to go. But you don't have to, you don't have to think about this was the corner and this was that or whatever. It's just partners, and you just stick them in there. And if you have the wrong ones in the middle, then zoom them. But you want one that's not with their partner on the outside. Yeah, then that's all there is to it. But I just wanted to say that again.
I was just reminded that yesterday Chris and I were talking on the phone, and I mentioned I was going to be doing this. And Chris used to dance to me quite a bit 30, 40 years ago. And he says every once in a while he remembers, oh, Don Beck used to use Dixie Grand a lot. I should remember to use it. I didn't realize I was using it that much, but
I don't think it was actually that you were overusing it. I think it was just that you had in your caller school or someplace or over the years you had talked about how what an underused call it was, and that's really what I remembered. So every time I go Dixie Grand, I go, oh, Don Beck, underused call, good idea. But
Nell, you were next.
I had one other quickie.
Okay.
But we and I don't know if we have any of mental image callers here.
We do.
Yeah, so there's easy. There's a what I think of as the Dixie Grand situation. If you're mental image calling and you're rolling along and you happen to notice that that you have your designee designee in the middle on the right hand side. So if he was the head, it'd be like head, star through, right and left through. If he's there, that's not how you got him there, but if he's there, and if the spot is an O and it's all the way to the right on the right hand side, so it's behind him, that's the Dixie Grand setup. So if you ever happen to notice you're there and you're calling along, you can just call Dixie Grand right there, and without having to analyze why or how or anything. Just a convenient place to do it from.
Mel, your hand's up also.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Not so sure about the flow, but when you're talking about the track 2 setup being the flip over, I was just looking at if you did a head square through 2 pass through, you're in that same setup. If you do a center square through 3 leading to a track 2, you do a girl circulate instead of boy circulate on the outside, and that'll also take you to a Dixie Grand.
There'd be a lot of places.
Yeah, and you're talking about the big circle. One of the things that I looked at was Alaman left, right and left grand, but with the third girl, right arm turn half to a wrong way thar, and you can do your Dixie Grand right from there. You've got the 4 girls in the centers. It's a silly little setup, but it actually feels quite weird, and it's quite a chuckle when they get it, because they realize it's just so simple. It's hard to fail at if they can do that wrong way thar. And the another one, this was one from Ed Foote, was head, star through and spread, slide through, Dixie Grand. And then you just do from there, you're coming into it, an all eight spin the top twice. So you're doing your left hand on the outside for your all eight spin the top. A slip the clutch will take you to your swinging your partner. So head, star through and spread, slide through Dixie Grand, all eight spin the top, all eight spin the top, slip the clutch. There's your partner swinging promenade. I can post those in the chat if you want.
Yeah, that would be good.
I'm confused, Mel.
Yeah.
You do a Dixie Grand, right, left, right. Are you looking for all eight left spin the top?
Well, you don't have to say left.
Why is that?
A spin the top. You can say left, but you don't have a spin the top is a spin the top. It's the free hand.
It's the free hand.
That's not what I understood.
If you're in a left hand wave, it's a spin the top. You can say left. And if you're coming out of a Dixie Grand, your hand going into the all eight spin the top is your left hand free, so it would be an automatic. But yeah, I would prompt it with a left hand, left spin the top, but it's not really necessary.
I'll just say that I believe it.
Yeah, Clark,
we'll hiccup with that though.
I'll just say that I believe it is necessary to say left in that case, but
I would say you'd be silly not to, but I'm not putting all the prompts in, but yes, absolutely. I would say that. I didn't think it was absolutely necessary because that's the free hand, that's your body flow.
But that's the obvious hand, Mel, but you're really not automatically stepped into a left hand wave. You're still facing that person, so you have to say left.
Yeah, no, it's not a free hand call. It's an any hand call, but which means it's a right hand call all the time, unless you already have the left hand joined. So you definitely have to say left.
That's like saying, I'm not gonna say that.
We're close to the hour. Let me do the thank yous, and then we'll continue with the conversations. I've got Lawrence and I've got Yolanda's hands up. But thank you guys again for coming. Thank you to our presenter. Yeah. Thank you to Dan for hosting electronically. Again, the biggie is thank you guys for coming. It turns out that I wasn't sure I had enough material or that it would stir up enough conversation to go the hour, but we're still going. This turned out to be a pretty interesting topic after all. And hopefully some of you guys that don't use it can now see ways to squeeze it in for a touch of variety here and there without having to really learn much. But the real question I have is, for some of you newer callers, were you able to follow this? Did you care? I know, Helen, you only do mainstream, so it probably didn't do much for you, although if you needed a workshop thing that everybody could do real easily. So anyway, with that, if the usual thing, if you guys only designated an hour to spend on Zoom this morning and have to leave, you don't have to apologize, just disappear. And otherwise, let the conversations begin. And I just said we had two people with hands up. Larry's the third. But Helen, because I was addressing something to you, go for it.
Okay, I only do basic, but can I say, if I have it set up so that everyone has a right hand, then I can say right and left grand, but on your third hand, would that be the same as what you're talking about?
If you had it set up to do that, yeah. Or again, it doesn't necessarily have to go to the corner.
Okay,
but,
okay.
Is it third hand or fourth hand? Dixie Grand, right, left, right. So before, well, yeah, right, be the fourth hand.
She's saying on the
On the fourth hand, because it's after the third hand.
The Dixie
Yes.
Grand, Dixie Grand is the 3, and then it'll be something on the 4th. They're expecting,
Yes,
they're expecting to do a 4th, but I'm telling them on the 4th do something else.
No,
yes.
no, you're right the first time on Dixie Grand. You're going to go right, left, right. So that's 1, 2, 3. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I think what you said was right and left grand, but on the third hand, start the Dixie. Is that what you said?
That's what I said, but that's
Yeah.
wrong. I realize that's wrong. I
No,
should
no.
play.
No, that's right. Well, it depends on where you started from. But if you say right and left grand on the third hand, that means right hand, left hand, right hand, right? So that's the right hand. That's the first hand of the Dixie Grand. That would be on 3. 1, 2, on 3, right, left, right.
Chris, Helen's trying to, for dancers who don't know Dixie Grand, can she substitute right and left grand on the third hand? And no, you need to substitute right and left grand, but on the fourth hand, do in our case, Alaman left or something.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I realize that.
And it would have to be a wrong way grand.
Correct. Right and left grand we think of as going in a certain direction for the boys versus wrong way grand, whereas
Right.
Dixie Grand doesn't care about the genders.
Okay, well then, okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Helen.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks. I must say I haven't been able to follow all of this. It's a bit quick for me, but you get lots of ideas by just listening to you all talking. So it's been great. Thanks very much.
Okay.
And especially for the basic, if I may add this, could be with your partner. If you have ocean waves, so the boys on the outside, girls on the inside, everybody with partner, and you would call an all-eight circulate, which will get you 4 ladies chain effect to the opposite lady. You could run into a wrong way grand, but on the fourth hand, which would be the action of a Dixie Grand, do an Alaman left, take partner in promenade, or even be home or walk in another right and left grand. So this is how you could use it in the basic.
So
Could you put that in Tamination so we can see it later on the recording?
You mean in the notes? Because I think Taminations isn't going to handle the around the out,
Doesn't handle the R's very well, or those type of things.
Okay.
Actually, before we go, I wanted to mention that Masami, you're in from Japan, which is cool. We haven't had many Japanese join us at this hour because I know it's pretty late for you. So welcome aboard, even though an hour late. Lawrence, I think your hand was up next.
Yes, thank you, Don. I have a couple of things. So first for Helen, and I know Swedish dancers, you can play with right pull bys and left pull bys. It's a very basic, I call them basics. If you want to, you can say all this Dixie Grand, everybody right pull by, left pull by, right pull by. Yeah, so get them the basic knowledge. So that's one comment for me.
Lawrence, you don't want to say everybody right, but well, I mean, it's those who can.
Yeah, of course. But it's what I'm trying to say is, sorry for the lack of words, is executing Dixie Grand with the commands and square dancing right pull bys and left pull bys.
Okay.
Because that's how we start in Europe, like creating the dances. For the beginners, when I learned Dixie Grand, I only used head start through Zoom Dixie Grand and the double pass through Dixie Grand from the one. So if you start with this with your checkers, I think that's a great thing. The reason why I raised my hand is want to make a little debate with Clark, my friend, is when we look at the definition, it says, and this was astonishing to me in this session, Dixie Grand circle, like starting formation. And the first that mentioned is Dixie start circle. But the way the discussion was all the double pass through and starting double and completing double pass through formation. So we maybe put Dixie Grand circle somewhere at the end or something like this because that's the way how people use it. That's one thought. Maybe I'm thing. And the other thing it says, when I look at the definition that in Don's handout, but it says or any formation where at least 2 dancers can start. Can I also name the dancers who can start? And Don, if you don't mind, put up terminations. And I like to get, this is one of my gimmicks setups, just to raise if it makes sense to, we have this discussion about the author of Dixie Grand, does he had in mind? And we had like coordinate from lines or 3x1 lines. It's altering the gestalt of the figure, and it's not the figure anymore, so it should not be, and so on. But for Dixie Grand, let's look at this side ladies chain. Heads roll while the heads roll away. And the heads left touch a corner. That's one of my setups, gimmicks of this. Easy to remember, side ladies chain, heads have sachet, heads left touch a corner. And then I say head men start on the diagonal, Dixie Grand. So it's not directly facing. I don't know if terminations can do that.
And terminations does some of that.
I have to say headman cross, I guess.
Yes, and if you say headman cross and pass to trade by element left, maybe that's the substitute. So just to make sure it works, so we can say centers cross if this is, or heads cross as a C1 call, A2 call, then pass through, that would be the second hand, and trade by would be the third hand, and here's your element left. So just to prove that it works. But naming it like head boys start on the diagonal Dixie Grand. And then that's really a question if this is like something we could use, or dancers will do it, but the definition says at least 2 dancers can start. I would add at least 2 dancers can start or been named or something like that. Just for the sake of confirmation.
I'm happy with your example, and what we were looking for with at least 2 dancers start is if you imagine a circle of 8 single file, all going clockwise. Actually, let me say it this way. If I had 4 dancers facing 4 other dancers and I spread that around into a circle, so on the first hand, 2 dancers start, and on the second, 4 dancers go, and on the third hand, 6 dancers go. That's a Dixie Grand, I think, that people would expect. It's kind of like those who can right, those who can left, those who can right. But I think we were looking to allow that kind of Dixie Grand, but I might not be right. I'll just put that out there. But I like what you did. I think if it's a gimmick, fine. If it fits the definition, fine. I think people will do it. I think it's a fine use.
I would think if you called something like center boys start on the, or center boys on the diagonal start a Dixie Grand, you would not have any problems with that.
Right.
No, I don't think, but we have the discussion right from 3x1 lines call and coordinate. And then people say, yeah, if you follow the algorithm step-by-step definition, it can work a coordinate out, yeah, but it is not a coordinate because the gestalt of the figure, how the dancers move, and what the authors originally had in mind, maybe that's a different conversation, but it's like what the author had in mind. Maybe he has never thought of a coordinate from this weird formation. So I was wondering if the author of Dixie Grand maybe, or is this gray, or should we add this to the definition or not? It's like, or named dancers who can start, something like that.
You're just, it's not that it's not so much that you're changing the call. You're just, you need 2 dancers facing, and you're using a, what's essentially a challenge concept, but that you can get away with, to just modify the first pull by so that those, they are facing, they're just facing on a diagonal. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I think it's a great idea.
And
okay,
your question about the author, the author is a guy named Bill Kastner, whose name I've seen, but I don't know him or of him. And I have the date written as 1957. So it's one of our very old calls. And I'm sure that back then, no one thought about the gestalt of the call. They just did whatever worked, as you know, to get people to be able to move around and dance.
Clark,
Clark?
I bet you if you went to other calls that Bill Kastner did, I know several sequences or, you know, group calls that were named that he'd done. He was quite the choreographer. But let's not get into the history of that right now. Mike, there are a few people with hands up, but if you got a quick one directly for Clark on this, go for it. Mike.
Was Dixie Grand originally written from a Dixie Grand circle? You know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Certainly the era that we're talking about for Dixie Grand there is the era of directional calling. So if I just had to wildly hallucinate what somebody back then would have thought of this boys diagonal start, I think they would have thought that was just fine.
Yolanda, you've been waiting patiently. What?
And before we do that, somebody's got an awful lot of noise in the background, and I can't figure out who to mute you. So if you're not speaking, could you please mute yourself?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Now Don, back to you.
Yolanda, you've been waiting patiently. Let's hear a.
Well, I've been waiting. Helen basically covered my question. I wanted to know if we could break it up, just like the AC/DC, you know, is trade and circulate, if we could modify it for the lower levels. And I think you guys have sort of covered that.
And Larry, you've been waiting impatiently. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pick on you. Go ahead.
Sure, I'm good. I just wanted to mention that Dixie Grand to me, well, first of all, there used to be a load of Dixie calls back in the 70s, and I'm not sure, you know, why Dixie Grand has survived, but it did. The call is special to me because there's no other plus calls where dancers can do the call from anywhere I put the dancers. The dancers locally, it doesn't, I even use the one that Lorenz said where the guys diagonally pull by. The dancers can do Dixie Grand from any position that I put them in. And that's pretty cool. There's very few calls where you can literally do everything you want with it, and the dancers can just any dancer can do it. So I think that's pretty cool. But I will tell you that the most popular Dixie Grand that I use is a Dixie Grand to home or a Dixie Grand to a stir. So don't forget you can use that as a get out. It doesn't always have to be Alaman left. A couple of other points. I think someone already mentioned.
Can you put those? Can you say those two just so we have those examples?
I can show you a picture of the place. Here's the way I think about it in my head when I'm calling.
Do you want me to do contamination? Set them up for you.
Sure. I'll show you one of them. There's actually 6 of them, because some start magic. Some start 8 chain through, some start trade by. I have pictures. I made pictures of them as well. Do you care which one you want to start with?
Nope. The most basic that people can remember.
Okay, the easiest one is a corner box on the east side of the square. So like sides right and left through, well, that on the other side. Here we go. There we go. So if you pass through, you can Dixie Grand and then face in at home.
Nice.
The heads will have to face in. Yeah. So that's the easiest one.
So, heads face in.
Yep, there you go.
You also could do a swing on the last hand and they'd be home.
So
Yeah.
what that one is, Larry, is what I was saying from a corner box pass through, and you can do a Dixie Grand, easy to add to your repertoire. And you're saying that, but that will end you 180 out from home. So do something to set up the 180 before that, and it'll take you home.
True. So the other thing is if you have 8-chain-3 get outs,
Yeah.
you can use those.
Right, exactly.
And so if you're a mainstream caller and you wanted to use Dixie Grand, you can use 8-chain-3 for that.
If
If it's a box.
If any of the formations we started from was a box,
Right.
then 8-chain-3 is equivalent. Yes.
Yep.
Flow is slightly different, but it's equivalent.
Right. That's it.
And that was basically the setup we did from 0 line square through 4 trade by. That's the 8-chain-3, or the Dixie Grand will get you there. Somebody else was, Regina, was that a hand up, or were you just scratching your head? Okay. Somebody else I thought had a comment we were gonna do. No, are we running out of comments? Wow.
No, Mickey, I would have.
I can make a comment on the this when you end at home. Do paso is a nice call to end it, and if you come from there.
Say that again, Goog.
If you do this where you end at home, do paso is a nice call to end it with.
Oh. I've always wondered also, how do you pronounce your first name?
Gugge.
Gugge. The E is pronounced a little. Gugge.
Yep.
I'll try to remember that. I won't, but I'll try. Anybody else's whose name I mispronounce, let me know, and I will try to correct that also. Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, Google also, but I want to mention that we also could walk around like on a right and left grand type thing. If we start with corner, or the best thing would be with the right-hand lady and go into a Dixie Grand, then you would come out with the left hand free for a do paso, which could either be for an home get out or for a courtesy turn, which also may be used in for the basic dancers, calling a right and left grand, but on the fourth hand, which would be similar to a Dixie Grand running into a do paso.
Larry, you mentioned that back when there were a lot of Dixie calls, and you're surprised this is the only one that survived.
Well, it's not. Yeah.
It's not. Dixie style to a wave, again, a right, left, right kind of a thing.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of C1 Dixie calls.
No, there's, Dixie sachet. I don't remember all of them. Never got into that too often, but
Dixie Diamond.
Yeah. Clark?
The guy we were talking about who wrote Dixie Grand, Bill Kastner, also wrote Wheel Around in 1950. At least that's what I have. But the database of who wrote the really old calls is not necessarily super accurate, because I don't think people thought about it that way back then. So, don't say that's the only thing the only 2 calls Bill Kastner wrote, but those are the only 2 calls I have attributed to him from any of the books that I took sources from of who wrote what. Later that turned into note services. So looking at really old note services, especially like Bill Davis and Bill Peters, and then later Don Beck's.
Sometime I'm hoping to get Jim Mayo on here. We should ask him what he remembers about Bill Kastner or any of the other callers that predate us. They have a lot of history. Tony Parks might even have some stuff on that, just because of all the research he's done on history. I'm thinking of one really cool sequence that I danced that Tony did in squares, a traditional dance, very non-symmetric and very amazing. And I think it was a Bill Kastner thing. I think I heard somebody else do it some other time, although Tony made it phrase out with the music beautifully. Clark?
Since you mentioned non-symmetric, I've usually most non-symmetric material has to be written beforehand and has some clever, the thing I always look for in the non-symmetric sequence is how did the caller make it symmetric again? What clever call did that? And for the discussion today, because as Larry said, the wide variety of starting positions for Dixie Grand, you could have a pretty non-symmetric starting formation that as the dancers did the right pull by and the left and right, suddenly they've all become symmetric. Half the dancers could be in a starting beginning double pass through and half might be in an 8-chain or something like that. And Dixie Grand can be the magic call that gets you out. And then often after Dixie Grand, the next call is Alaman left or something. So like the sequence was non-symmetric to the bitter end, Dixie Grand, boom, you're fixed, Alaman left. That's kind of pretty cool.
I am totally doing that.
Speaking of,
I've got 3 asymmetrics that I use with Dixie Grand, that are kind of fun, to spring on dancers on occasion.
speaking of starting in all sorts of formations, the Color Lab thing had it listed as a quarter tag. That's not one of the examples I used, but obviously the one of if you do a heads right and left through star through, a double pass through to a Dixie Grand. You could also have it if the center step to a wave and then Dixie Grand. And I'm sure you could set it up to get a ping pong circulate to that position and then Dixie Grand.
I without remembering what the setup was, I know I've called centers fan the top to a Dixie Grand, and that felt good.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
If any of you remember the old Arky positions, I even dug up from my notes from the 70s Dixie Grand from Arky. So you end the Dixie Grand and then you have Arky Alamans to an Arky Grand. So the call is very versatile. What you can do with it.
I think I've got that one. Heads right, left through and pass fusion. Ping pong circulate and roll. Dixie Grand. Same sex element left.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it.
Nice, Guga. Thanks.
This call is such a versatile call. You can have a lot of fun with, and it's just pull bys. And so it seems to me that it really ought to be on a lower level, like basic or something.
One of the things you just said I was about to comment on is it is an easy call to teach, an easy call to remember, and could be on a lower level. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't stay where it is. We got enough junk on the lower level already, but yeah, if you're going to throw it in as a workshop tip or something, because it is versatile, it's easy, it's not trick. It doesn't trick people. They pretty much can do it from wherever they happen to be. So that's kind of cool stuff. I saw a hand moving. Oh, I guess it was not saying me next. It was saying bye.
I would note on that point about an easy one to teach, kind of like Do Pas So. Every time I've danced it as a relatively new dancer, it's almost always cued. So if you just cue it, yeah, you can probably do it cold.
Yeah, I would say that Dixie Grand, the problem is not that it's great that it's so easy to teach, but the problem is I think the dancers get bored of it because callers tend to call it from one position almost all the time. And they always throw a right and left grand after it. And so it's just, it's right pull by, left pull by, right pull by. It's like a 7 or 8 hand. I think a 7-hand right and left grand, essentially, or wrong way grand. Well, it goes wrong way and then when the right and left grand, it goes the other way. The key is to try to use it in some different ways, so dancers don't get bored with it because it's so simple.
As Mike said way earlier, you don't want to overuse it. But as I said, it's nice to throw a few of them in just to, so you're not overusing just square through 3 to a corner. And because it's underused, and there's some simple, really simple ways for the whether site or module caller to add it to their repertoire. That's why I thought this would be a fun session.
I wouldn't call I wouldn't call Dixie Grand Alaman left, right, and left grand, but you might, if you really were hell bent on doing that, maybe do box and out and a wrong way grand instead. Just to make it seem like you did something.
Well, that's been a grand session, guys. I think we're wearing, or has it been a Dixie session? Yeah. Dixie cup to eating too much ice cream. I'm sensing a slowing down. I guess what I'm trying to round it out. Anybody else? Any new thoughts on it? People we haven't heard from, or Mike? Go ahead. We've heard from you,
Yeah,
but you got a
I
comment.
got a singing call figure. I remember Tim Mariner using Dixie Grand, where the head square through 4, swing through, boys run, couple circulate, Ferris wheel, and center start a Dixie Grand, and you'll end up with your corner, turn your corner by the left, full turn, promenade. That was a nice singing call that he used.
That reminded me, I was picturing what you were going to do, and I was thinking of a different one, but I don't know how it times out. But if you do the same head square through, swing through, boys run, couples circulate, up to that point, if you just do a wheel and deal, you can do a Dixie Grand to a new corner, man left, come back and promenade. You might have to throw in an extra forward and back or do-si-do to make it time, but so yeah, again, if you're in a position where you can do a pass-through trade-by to the corner, you could also do a Dixie Grand to a new corner, Alaman left, come back and promenade, come back and swing if you need to kill some more time, promenade. Mel. You're muted.
There we go. I just added on in the chat that you're talking about that T-bone type setup.
Yeah.
So I just put that in there from the corner box. But if you do the pass through trade by outsides, roll and box the gnat, hold on, that'll take you right into the Dixie Grand. They're the only two that can start it anyway. And it really flows nicely into that little sequence. And I wanted to add on to what Clark had said on the all 8 spin the top. You're absolutely right, Clark. It is intuitive to use the left hand because that's the hand that would be coming forward to you on a left touch a quarter or any other thing would be a natural left hand movement. But I was just reading there. It says from a right and left grand circle, the command all 8 left spin the top has everybody turn. It doesn't clarify what hand is free. It would be absolutely stupid and bad body flow to call spin the top and everybody using a right hand. They'd all use it, right? But you're right. They've actually written it out that way. So it is all 8 left spin the top, even though it goes against what you say on spin the top. So I stand corrected.
Some people, if you just called it, some people would do it left because they were following body flow and hand availability, and some would do it right because they were following definitions.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, oh, speaking of asymmetrics.
and there are a lot of cases like that where I've, like who's your partner in Ocean Wave? I say if the callers can't decide which it is, don't expect the dancers to decide which it is.
I was just looking at if I call all 8, like Alaman left your corner, all 8 spin the top, you've only got one hand free. If I say face your corner, turn partner right, come back to your partner, all 8 spin the top, you've got the left hand free. If your body flow is there and your timing is called, I would say the only person that would do a normal, in quotation marks, spin the top starting with the right hand is somebody that thought about it and said, oh, we've got to start with the right hand. If they were dancing to the music, they would have to use the left hand. But we all know that timing is not perfect. And then, of course, you've always got challenge dancers that come down and dance basic, mainstream, and plus. And, of course, they will argue definitions like a theological seminary. So I will accept this and step back and say, Clark, I agree with you. It is written that way. So there's no dispute in it.
Mel,
Hey,
do you,
that singing call that Mike that Mike showed us, and then with the Ferris wheel, and then Don pointed out you could do the wheel and deal to do the corner progression, and then there was the question of whether that variation would time out as well. Just obvious note here. The Ferris wheel, the wheel and deal is the same as the Ferris wheel, and the centers pass through. And so the Ferris wheel centers pass through is the same corner progression as the wheel and deal, of course. But that they'll probably dance it better, and it'll eat up a little bit more time. And so if there was a timing issue, that might be the way to go.
I forgot to mention, from a two-faced line, the call is not wheel and deal, it's wheel and deal, don't Ferris wheel.
Right. But in this case,
only where you live, Don.
Centers pass through is probably actually what you want. I'm guessing.
Clark?
This will be a slight change of subject, and but I was looking for more information on Bill Kastner with all my online resources, or on my computer resources. I posted one in the chat that's on Cedar's site, but you guys should be aware that the entire collection of the Sets in Order magazines has been digitized. And looking in the oldest one where I found his name mentioned, the searching didn't actually find the article, but while I was perusing that, I found the following. Oh, come on, where are you? If I shrink this, will I see it? There we go. And this is from the 1949 August issue of Sets in Order magazine, where he says, this isn't Bill Kastner, but presumably the editor, says, "Mind statistics. Have you ever wondered just how far sweeping this square dance trend has become? If you're an old timer in the business, by now you have perhaps reconciled yourself to its tremendous growth, and perhaps have even made a guess or two as to just how far things will go." And he mentions a couple of states like Wisconsin, Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arizona, where it's growing, but he's talking about Southern California. So this would presumably be Bob Osgood. He says in Southern California in 1941, there were 5 square dance callers. And at the beginning of World War II, there were 5 or 6 square dance callers and 10 small clubs. By 1946, there were 11, presumably clubs or callers, and the clubs were 35. And then people began looking for things growing. By 1948, there were 175 places to dance in Southern California. In 1949, it was up to 350. And when this article was written in August of 1949, there's 525 clubs with 10 new ones forming each week. So it's just incredible what the growth was like. We speak of that, but I've never seen the numbers written out as plainly as this for how it boomed even in Southern California. So I thought that was interesting.
Would you drop the link to that in the chat here? Because
I know I got this off my computer, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I think I loaded all the Sets in Order magazines on my computer. So when I do, searches, it actually finds stuff in those in addition to everything else. But somewhere, someone knows where all the Sets in Orders are online and we can look at them. This was the 1949-08 version magazine. Yep.
Mel, do you have anything you want to advertise, like tonight's or tomorrow morning's session?
Got Chris Varnacki coming in. He's going to be taking a slightly different look at site calling. He has a different approach to the way he approaches, no pun intended, approaches site calling. Self-taught, and he sort of took a new way into looking at the squares. And I love taking ideas like, and you supported it as well, like when we had Dave Prescott come on to talk about his version of site calling, or Bob Elling talking about the way he uses the chicken plucker, maintaining the sequence. It's always good to have just a different look at things. A few people said that when they were talking terminations, that, oh, I never thought about doing it that way or setting something up that way. So I love having these different perceptions coming in. So Chris Vernacki is coming in to talk to us about the way he approaches site calling.
So I'm glad you repeated his name because I missed it at the beginning. Chris Vernacki?
Warnacki, Warnacke.
And where's he from?
And it's Klaus.
Klaus. Oh, he's from Germany. Yes,
Klaus.
I can picture the name, but
yeah, the
Klaus
W is pronounced with a
Warnacke.
V.
Warnacke.
Warnacke.
Klaus Warnacke. Interesting. That should be good. I'll probably be eating supper then.
and the following week I've got Corbin Geist coming in to talk about expecting the unexpected. So that could go anywhere.
We had one of those, our second or third or fourth one.
It's always a good one for discussion
with John Jones, and it did go anywhere. Guys, I'm thinking I'm going to bow out. Many of us has. We will see you next week. This has been. Oh, and first of all, has anybody else got anything they want to advertise? We should make this a regular thing here. Good. Did I leave enough?
There is. I would like to put out. There are a number of caller schools that are coming up, but there's also one coming up in September. If you haven't got a booking, it's Ken Ritusi is doing. He calls it the Teaching Institute, and it's all about teaching how to teach rather than teaching how to become a caller. It's teaching how to teach square dancing and how to teach callers to teach. So, and that's coming up in September. There'll be flyers out on that, but I just wanted to mention that, especially for some of the newer people.
It's a very important topic, and I've done a talk on my version of that too, but yes. Yeah. Anything else? As usual, you have any suggestions for me to contact for people that might want to do some of these sessions for us, let me know. I know, Mike, I've asked you in the past, but you've never responded, but you had some good ideas that I thought you might want to share.
I can't remember what they were.
I can't either. What?
Just give him a topic.
I don't have. No. What are you passionate about? What do you want to share with the world?
I don't know. I used to do an awful lot with schools, young people.
Oh, yes.
And thousands of them. That was amazing. Maybe how you organize something like that or get your foot in the door.
I'll have to think about that, Don. Maybe we can do something that's like that sometime. I no longer do it because COVID destroyed it, but it was part of my square dance calling business, a good part of it.
Were you full-time, Mike?
Yes. I remember, and I kept track of this in the school year of, I think it was 2010 to 2011. I taught almost 12,000 kids.
Oh, wow.
And how much did you teach them? Or save that for a session.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing this.
It varied a lot. One of the high schools I did, from year to year, they would keep track of what I called for the kids, especially the men phys ed teachers were very interested. And they'd have all the data on their computer. So I would come in and they would say, okay, now last year you did bend the line, flutter wheel. This year, can you do something different like cloverleaf and all this stuff? The men were more interested than the ladies were.
Did any callers evolve from that?
No, not really. But the one school I did in Fairport, and I think I told you this before, every year they would have what they called a showdown hoedown. I would go in there for a week, and at the end of the week, the teachers would sign up the best squares from each class, and they would have competition with prizes like Pizza Hut stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I would get normally 40 squares.
I'll bet you that
dancing.
would make a very interesting session.
Yeah.
You see you see the format, a little bit of presentation, and then lots of people complaining about, I mean, talking about what you just said, adding to it. We try
I really want you to do this presentation. I'd love to go to that one.
yeah.
So would I.
What
Mickey,
years did this happen? What years?
I stopped doing this when COVID hit, but I started around 1977 or so. What happened was there was a caller that was doing this schools a little bit, and he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So he referred me, and I started with one school, but I would go to a lot of phys ed conferences, teachers conferences, have a booth, have flyers, have resumes and all, and it gradually increased, you know, and it was a regular part of my business.
who was that caller?
Name was Bob Ellis. He was from our area.
Mike, if I can ask a question on that. I was doing something similar, not at that extent by any means in Canada, but I got asked by the teachers themselves to come in and do a series of workshops for the teachers how to teach square dancing, because square dancing being taught in schools was absolutely atrocious. Did that ever go anywhere for you? I mean, it was like, I learned square dancing, or I was introduced to square dancing in elementary school and then in high school, and they still had, you know, the 1947-78 record that they had to fight to find a record player, and it was still being used, and they're still using those same records today in some of the schools to teach square dancing, but it's getting harder and harder to find record players. Did you ever get called in by the teachers to, you know, set up a program to teach them how to teach and actually give them a program to teach and do some recordings for them so that they could put the music on?
I did a couple of workshops on how to teach calls, but never really gave them any type of program for it. Okay. But I want to say 90%, probably even more, of your success in the schools is the music you use.
Absolutely. And the way you react to the kids, as opposed to, they're square dancers. They're not, you know, kids, they're people. And I've noticed that the ones that have success treat them as people, not as teacher student. They treat them as the same way they teach their dancers in a regular class to a certain degree. That's where because even today I find everybody's got this bad, oh, I tried that in school, it was absolutely horrid. And there's very few that said, oh yeah, that was in school, that was a lot of fun. And the ones that had fun is usually because somebody came in like yourself and you took over a phys ed class for a while and you gave them something that was worth walking away with.
I've talked to people trying to bring people in, and they say, geez, I haven't done that since school. And I'd say, I wish you'd never done it so you could see it done correctly. But my introduction, I guess we did it in grammar school once. I don't remember much about that. But in junior high school, we were in one of these huge gyms where the sliding doors separated the boys' gym from the girls' gym. And the gym instructors told us, if I catch anybody peeking through the crack at the girls' gym, we're going to open the doors and make you square dance with them.
Yeah.
Literally, it was posed as a punishment. Yeah. Totally different door that I finally got in and got sucked in and totally.
Yeah, when I was in Ottawa, it was a regular thing at the end of the year. There's about 3 or 4 different high schools, and I would go in because they'd have that last 2 weeks where they'd have all study halls or they'd have empty sessions, but the kids had to be in school. And it was great for me because I'd go in and just basically take over the gym for the entire day. And you started with 20. By the end of the first day, you had maybe 100. By the end of the third day, the gym was packed all day long. And you got 200-300 students in the gym. Just great. Teachers loved it because they didn't have to sit in the study hall and watch people do nothing. Because, you know, they do their test, but they still had to be there. But it was great. And you tried to give that good feeling that they'd walk away. And I kept getting invited back, and it was every year, and it was great.
Let's not use up Mike's program here, but there's obviously going to be a lot.
No, I'm interested. I might do it, please.
I had kids in one school. I was there for a couple of days, and they had kids skipping classes coming into the gym to dance.
There was one group that I used to do once a year for a group of teens, and there was I can't remember what, a line dance that was very, very, very popular at the time. I wasn't much into line dancing, but I would teach this also. And one year I'm setting up, and one of the kids comes up to me and he says, "Just in case you forgot your record, I've got a copy of it here," because they've been doing it on their own. What was the name of that?
Achy breaky, probably.
No, it wasn't. It was before that.
Amos Moses.
Yeah, Amos Moses. Thank you, Clark. Mickey, are you still with us, or are we just seeing your picture? He went off to get something to eat. All righty. I'm going to bow out. I'm going to clean up these notes that I've just been taking on this session and pass them along to Dan to post also. Another Saturday's gone by, and I've had a lot of fun. Thank you guys for entertaining me. Take care, guys. We'll see you.
Have a good day, Don.
Great session, Don.
Later.
Thank you, Don. Dan.
Yolanda, did you get your what you were getting sorted out with Bob last week, the choreography, and Chris? Was it Chris you were with? Oh no, Mickey. It was Mickey at the end of the last session.
I'm working on checkers. Anybody want it? I haven't been as open with some people about what's been going on, but I've had to rehab myself, and so I've had to learn how to peel an egg and tie my shoes and stuff. So I can see it, but sometimes I have a hard time actually moving the checkers. And so then when somebody says, "Oh, if you just do it this way or that way," and then it goes, "Oh, okay." So what happened was when I injured my shoulder, I lost all the nerve information. So I just have to reboot everything.
I understand that fully, because when I hurt my spine at work, I had no nerve connection from my spine down the left side of my body and my left leg. There was no nerve connection whatsoever. So I had to teach myself how to walk with no nerves, which is really quite phenomenal.
Yes. And
yeah, when I had the surgery, I got everything back, and I had to unlearn what I had taught myself in order to learn how to walk again. So yes. I feel your pain trying to.
Well, and the thing is, they didn't realize the first 6 years that I needed glasses, so I learned everything by touch. So having that touch taken away is like I couldn't see. Like, I know you guys have all been very patient with me as I learned. And then I've been saying to them, I think I'm much more tired than I should be. So they finally, after 3 or 4 years of me saying that, finally tested me for how I'm sleeping. And it turns out, I'm only getting the equivalent of 2 hours sleep. So I have to, and they said, "Oh, and that's never going to change." Well, they've told me before when I was in car accidents, that's never going to change. And I've always managed to rehab myself. So I will do so. Right. So, but the checkers, for some reason, I'm happy. But, Mickey taught me how to do the separate, go around one. And now I can just go, okay, so it's square through 4, separate, go one round, and it's.
Yep.
Ta-da! And I've got partner lines. It's like, oh, see, but now I remember that. Once I can do it with my hands, I have that memory. Right? So it's learning it.
I was going to ask if you wanted to look at something or whatnot, we can do that. Dan, I didn't know if you wanted to go, because I can always open up my room or whatnot.
I think, what I could do is I can stop recording now. Whoops, let me mash that button.